We know that judging poetry can be very subjective, so we wondered how that might work out. So just to tell you maybe how we went about judging, we took the entries away individually, over 100, and we read them independently. And we didn't settle on a strict criteria, but as we are both in the same writers group, we probably felt that as we're used to critiquing each other's work, we shared a similar opinion regarding presentation on page, grammar, spelling, all the basic things that should be present in a good poem. We made notes and narrowed the list down to a short list, and maybe some strong maybes as well, and included those. And we met them together and we had a look at the narrowed down ones, and not surprisingly, we practically the same poems in the list. We read each one again and discussed what kept each poem on the shortlist. And there were some common themes, and I'll just mention some of those. Autumn featured a lot, lots of apples, plums. Surprisingly, spring cropped up quite a lot, especially in the title. There were lots of bogs, lots of turf, the banked and the smouldering variety. A lot of father poems. A lot of poems about father working in his garden. We expected a lot of World War I poems, but surprisingly we didn't have any of those. So maybe at this point I'll just mention what might put a poem on the no pile. It's definitely I've ruled incorrect spelling, bad grammar, not bad presentation, but sometimes centralisation of a poem on the page can prejudice the judge a little, especially if it reads like a menu. You're always expecting a price list beside each line. That can be off-putting. Elaborate fonts, fancy embellishments like clip art. I mean, a good poem should stand on its own without anything beside it. Long rambling footnotes, any kind of explanation as to why the poem is written. Again, the poem should stand on its own without that. Predictable, unoriginal rhyming schemes, overuse of adjectives that can sometimes suck the life out of nouns, doesn't always work well. Very brief poems with undeveloped themes. Some poems too we felt were very heavily influenced by a recently well-known deceased poet. Lots of furrows and digging and things like that. Fine if it's original and takes a fresh look at the theme, but sometimes it becomes a little too predictable. So we had a short list, and from there we had to choose the winners. And Michael will speak on them in a little while. But all of them delighted us. We agreed that these were poems that surprised us, made us sit back, and there was an element of, wow, I wish I thought of that, I wish I could have written that. These poems were fresh, surprising, well executed, without appearing to have tried too hard. So now I think we will read the short list of poems. Anybody who's here who has their short list of poems will read them themselves. Anyone that isn't, myself, Michael and Paddy will read them in their absence. So thank you very much. and the unsightly vanishes. The sum at the bottom of an overdue bill. Death notices. Results of blood tests you wish you hadn't gone to. The blank back of the page appears, and here, a tweak or two. The beak of her own chimera. The gelato twirl of the unicorn's horn. The puffy tail of a squirrel as she paraglides between branches. Or whatever strikes your fancy. Let the fingers hold the paperwork clutter of your mind into beauty.
And I should say, I suppose, one of the nice and pleasing things from the point of view of judges is that when you actually look at the poems and think that a short poem like that, or the photograph poem, for instance, got into the top 10, as did that long Pitcairn poem and the Shelter poem, which are long. So I hope it shows that we have, yes, that we're not biased and we didn't impose our interpretation, if you like, or our style on it. And I think sometimes, sometimes when people are entering competitions, they say, who's the judge? And they look at his poems or her poems and say, I'm going to send that type of. I don't think that always works. Sometimes it might, but it doesn't always work. I think what poets are looking for, surprise, newness, something different. And that could be something different from the type of poems they write. So as I say, it's nice that we have a selection of different forms, different shapes, different lengths. And this again is one of those short poems with short lines, very carefully crafted. And I like the title again, Wisdom of the Origamist. The mention of the origami in the title again takes away the puzzle aspect. If you didn't, if it was called Wisdom, you'd be wondering, like, what's going on with this poem? And yet once you put in origamist in the title, then that takes that away and you know what the folding and all that, you know what that's about. And the poem then moves on, you can concentrate on what the poem really is about. Whatever that is, because it's not quite clear. I like that beginning. That's a lovely, confident beginning. Now I do this. Stop. See, semicolon. So he's confident enough to give us an order, if you like. Tell us what he's going to do. And then it simply says, as simple as closing your eyelids, one fold and the unsightly vanishes. And then it moves out from this, you're sort of concentrating on someone doing something with paper on a table, and suddenly the whole thing moves out to the sum at the bottom of an overdue bill. Death notices. Results of blood tests you wish you hadn't gone to. So that encompasses quite an amount of the toil and trouble that we're subject to every day, every week, whatever. The blank back of the page appears. That's nice. And then there's those strange words even. Chimera. The gelato twirl of a unicorn's horn. That's, again, unexpected. And it does make you look carefully at it. Anything like that breaks up what seems to be a run of simple description, makes you think more carefully about the poem. You have to use it carefully, not too much of it. But one word like chimera, the gelato twirl of a unicorn's horn, which is a lovely image anyway. And then it goes on to the square, which is a nice image about paragliding. That's a nice word to use about a square, or whatever strikes your fancy. So that kind of says, you go and fancy thing. And then there's a very, very nice ending. Simple, but very effective. And again, it's not quite sure what it means. It harkens back to the origamist, but we're not quite sure what it means, but we do get a good feeling of what it means. Let your fingers fold the paperwork clutter of your mind into beauty. So that could refer to origami, could also refer to writing poetry, of course, or anything else that we do, folding the clutter of your mind into beauty. So that's why that poem by Armand made the shortlist. As we met, I had a worry in my mind that one poem stood out for me from the beginning, and that's what happens when you're judging. There's one that just kind of stays there, yeah. And when I met Marie says, there's one note that has kind of stuck in my mind. And it was the same one, which was lovely. Because it means, well, we didn't have to argue about her. I didn't have to convince her that mine was right.
Or I convinced you that mine was right.